Drop it. Cenk, Uygur, John, Iadarola, Adrienne, Lawrence, ready for an awesome show with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have lots of fun commentary. Some of the stories today affect me personally, and some that I have information about that the public necessarily doesn't have.
You're talking about cats?
Yeah, yeah. Some very useful, some not remotely useful, as you will see. So that's a fun intro to the show, and we've got Donald Trump for you. Oh, of course, right? AOC's on a wonderful warpath, and now some people in the Democratic Party striking back against just Democrats. I say now, as if that wasn't already happening, but it's happening on a much bigger scale. And they're going to Fox, their beloved Fox, to strike back. So that's a ton of fun. Tons of show for you. John, let's do it.
Oh, wow, okay, that was a fast one. Okay, well, in that case, we'll jump into it. In a time when Donald Trump is attacking so many different groups of Americans, can any major media outlet completely avoid talking about politics? Well, so far, ESPN's done a pretty good job of it under Donald Trump, but not all of its hosts want it to continue that way. Take a look at what Dan Batard said earlier today.
What you're seeing happening around here is about race, and it's been turned into politics. And we only talk about it around here when Steve Kerr Popovich says something. We don't talk about what is happening unless there's some sort of weak, cowardly sports angle that we can run it through, when sports has always been a place where this stuff changes. Man, Muhammad Ali was fighting for this stuff in the 60s. The Bill Russell and Jim Brown are really old. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is old. These people who were fighting, the most powerful among us in sports, who are fighting in the civil rights era for things, atrocities happening to black people that we're still paying for now in a country where this is our greatest sin. What has happened to minorities in this country? They're old and dying. Jim Brown walks with a cane, man. He walks with a cane. He's gonna go to the grave without having seen change. He's gonna go to the grave with Colin Kaepernick still out of the league. Literally blackballed.
Okay, so I want to make a lot of commentary on Dan Batard's great points here, and we've got more of his video for you. But first, fun points. How awkward was that camera shot on that guy? Until he was like, I can't take it anymore. I'm just gonna walk out.
I'm good.
Why are you still taking my shot when this guy is making a poignant political point? And I can't stand to be here anymore. It made me feel good about the amateurs, because sometimes we'll stay an extra half a second on one of the hosts. Well, we don't stay an extra 45 seconds on the host, and that's ESPN, right? Well, the wrong guy. I love that.
They reached out to the director and asked, why did you let that shot continue for so long? And he said, I shut it down very fast. Very fast.
Oh, wow.
The director, apparently Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And then I have a wonderful personal story about Dan Batard. I just ran into him in Miami. You guys will love it. It has nothing to do with this story, so I'll save it to the end. All right, back to you, John.
Okay, so you want to go to more of his video?
Yeah, because I think he's made some wonderful points. Let's hear them all and then talk about why he's so right.
Exactly. I mean, he's making great points about what's going on, but he also ties it in with the sometimes stated but often silent policy to ESPN to not get into these sorts of materials, as you'll see.
This is deeply offensive to me as somebody whose parents made all the sacrifices to get to this country. Send her back. How are you any more American than her? You're more privileged, you're whiter, you're richer. People don't know whether your money's real or not. You've had every privilege afforded to you by America, every privilege. And now what you do with that power is you go after brown people and black people and minorities. And around here, we won't talk about it. We won't talk about it unless Russell Wilson is saying something about it on his Instagram page. Then we have the power to run with it. Weak ass shield.
That's strong.
Okay, yeah, it's super strong. Again, though, with the camera shots. If you notice, the guy who left his seat because he couldn't take it anymore, they got him. He sits down at a new place, and they got him from the side angle. Still not showing Batard. Look, it's a tiny, funny point. Let's move on to the major stuff. Look, what first thing Batard said was about sports history. 1,000,000%, 1,000,000% right. The 1968 Olympics, where they obviously raised their hands with the black gloves. We've covered that story 1,000 times. Muhammad Ali not going to Vietnam, going to prison over it. And Jim Brown, and he went over some of those weeks ago. I agree with him. It is amazing that it is the year 2019, and they're still blackballing athletes like Colin Kaepernick for speaking out. And it's always speaking out on behalf of justice. That is a thing that people cannot tolerate. They will not have it. And so, and it's, when's the last time someone got blackballed because they were too right wing?
Yeah, exactly.
In sports, I literally don't know any time that has ever happened to a right winger. And what a left winger is not doing is, it's not like, hey, well, yeah, hey, he was left wing, but he was really militant. No, Kaepernick talked to guys who were in the military, decided the most respectful way to protest police shooting unarmed black men was to take a knee during the anthem. Like, it cannot be more civil, it cannot be more constitutionally protected, freedom of speech, et cetera, and still they're blackballing people over it. He won a lawsuit over it. It's absolutely definitive that they did that. And now ESPN is like, shh. And why? All because of right-wing intimidation. Because God, they cry and cry and cry. No one cries like a right winger. So the minute you say anything, oh yeah, my beloved Donald Trump, a good day. Oh, I'm not gonna watch it. And it's not true. They always watch. The ratings never go down. The Nike's stock went up by $6 billion after they supported Kaepernick. People keep buying, so he's 1,000% right. Yes, I said 1,000,000 and 1,000%. Okay, neither one of those is real.
Add them together.
No, I think Le Batard made some excellent points, and he's absolutely right in terms of athletes speaking out, but also his concern of not being able to speak out unless it's somehow intersected with an athlete. And that becomes problematic because essentially what ESPN is doing is asking its hosts who speak on a daily basis about a variety of topics to limit their intersectionality, to limit the issues that impact them and their communities or the issues that they care about. And you can't divorce yourself from racial issues if you're a black woman, or from issues that impact your community. And so to be silenced on that end is extremely problematic, and Le Batard was in the right for calling it out.
Yeah, and by the way, sorry, John, one quick thing about sports fans, because you brought that up. If anyone knows it's okay to be on one side and not the other, it's sports fans. So they don't respect you more if you're like, well, I like the Cowboys and the Steelers just the same. Right? No, right? They get it. You're on one side, I'm on the other side. That's when we go to war and we figure out who wins, right? Yeah. And so there's a guy named Matt Jones in Kentucky, populist guy, very progressive, does a progressive show out of Kentucky and doesn't hide a sports show, doesn't hide it at all. And he's for Kentucky, University of Kentucky, and he's against Louisville. If you're a sports fan, and so what Mitch McConnell does is he's like, I like them both. I'll get them, right? Everybody knows. So it's like actually the worst place to try to pretend you're for everybody is in sports because no actual fan will buy it.
Yeah, it's the analogy I'm gonna make to your earlier point about what you can get away with and not get blackballed is not gonna be sports related because I don't have those. But Mel Gibson's getting movies now. Yeah. Richard Spencer was on CNN this week. Yeah. I can't get on CNN. They put a Nazi on CNN. That's how this country works. They will allow anything as long as you're right wing. Now, to catch you up from that broadcast, ESPN spent today telling employees that its no politics policy is still in place even after the show that we just showed you. ESPN officials were spreading the word through the media Friday that nothing has changed in terms of policy, in which it only wants its commentators to delve into politics when it intersects with sports, which I have to assume means that they didn't listen to anything he said because the entire point he was making was that it naturally and necessarily intersects with sports. And so I also wanted to talk about some of the history of this because I've been doing some research after having Ricky Strom of TYT Sports on the Damage Report earlier today to talk about this. So this is apparently a somewhat new policy because under Pataro's predecessor, the current head, John Skipper, ESPN had at times been more political. And during the Trump administration, that sometimes made the network a target of criticism. In 2017, former ESPN SportsCenter anchor Jamel Hill criticized Trump on Twitter. She was suspended for the controversy and has since left the network. The tweet that she was apparently suspended for was that Donald Trump is a white supremacist who has largely surrounded himself with other white supremacists, which has only been proven true 1,000 times over since then. But she also has tweeted a bit in response to what we just saw, saying ESPN isn't a political network, but to me and Dan, racism isn't political, it is right and wrong. Silence or tolerance of racism is racist because that means on some level you're okay with other people being dehumanized. She says, I do not blame ESPN for its approach because their primary function is to serve fans and make money, but some things are just bigger than that.
Yep, no, she's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Without question, she's insanely right on that point. And kind of just to clarify, because the reality is in the optics of how it really actually went down is that's right. She did tweet about the president being racist. The thing is, in the aftermath, a lot of people came to her defense, and she was rallied and protected by a lot of celebrities and high-profile people. So ESPN could not necessarily suspend her without facing considerable backlash. So what they did was wait until she tweeted something mundane about the Dallas Cowboys and boycott, not even advancing a boycott. And then ESPN decided to read into that tweet and go ahead and say, we're suspending her for that tweet.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's all about optics, but we know the reality of the situation. And she is right in that there are things much bigger than sports, and they are sexism, racism, and the things that impact individuals of marginalized communities that go on everywhere at every company all the time.
Yeah, so let me address a couple of those things. So I know what right wingers are thinking. Oh God, now you're gonna fire everybody for being racist.
Yeah.
Or now you say that they can talk about racism and call people racist when they're racist. Outrageous, right? But guys, even you have to recognize there has to be some line, right? So if Trump were to say, you know what, maybe we start putting the Jews in the camps. Would anyone say, hey, no, ESPN shouldn't talk about it? It's not about sports. It's not about sports, and if it doesn't matter if you're a Jewish host or you're not a Jewish host, doesn't matter. You got to stay out of it, etc. Some of you might think that, but I think overwhelming majority of people would say, no, that's okay. You should be allowed to talk about that. So the question is, where's the line? And so that's what Batard is kind of pushing here by being very aggressive. I mean, saying that it's a weak ass shield to only do it if it comes up in the case of sports. You saying they're using the sports figures as meat shields, calling it cowardly several times. Now, second reason why it's important that he's doing it is because he is one of their most successful hosts. And so you need someone with more leverage and power to be able to do it, because if you're a reporter in the field and you don't have as much leverage and you don't have ratings that rely on your personality, well, they'll fire you and that won't be hard at all. When Dan does it, then it presents a question, so what's ESPN gonna do? They say, oh no, it's still in place. Well, what are you gonna do about one of your top guys who just clearly, obviously violated that policy and called you out on it? I don't know, right? That's why it's important for powerful people to step up, not just grassroots folks. So I want to commend him twice over for that. Even though now I get to the funny, relevant story. So we're there for the Miami debate a couple of weeks ago. I run into him, and I had known him like ever so briefly when I worked in Miami, when Ben and I worked at Whammy. And I said, hey Dan, it's Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. And he's like, what? And I'm like, well, I used to work at Whammy and you used to come in and with Ben Mankiewicz, and he's like, what? So, my God, no one has remembered me less in American history.
Oh, wow. It's a great story, though. It really is. That'll keep you humble. Yes, it will.
Definitely. And what I like too was that
I like that you threw Ben under the bus there too.
Yeah, I know, right? And I might have even said, oh, now he's the host of Turner Classic Movies, because obviously Dan doesn't recognize Young Turk, doesn't know it at all, right? So I'm like, Turner Classic Movies, maybe that triggers something. He's like, no. And I was like, okay, I'm done. But what I like is that
actually you were my roommate for a couple of months.
You're at my wedding. Come on, man.
But in both instances, over the top honesty.
That's true.
Because a lot of people would have been like, oh yeah, I remember that, right?
Yeah.
Not with Dan. No, he's like, no, I definitely do not remember you.
Yeah.
Or anything about you.
The only other thing I want to say is the sort of policy that they have at ESPN, it just feels like the same thing that we see everywhere. We're like, okay, at ESPN you can't talk about politics. At CNN, MSNBC, you have to be very careful about how you talk about politics. Don't challenge certain people, don't use certain words. Is something racist? We'll leave it to other people. Don't have primaries, like these sorts of things where it's like, let's just keep everything calm and everything civil and balanced and neutral. And all of that is BS. All of that just means that the people who have power right now will benefit because nobody gets to challenge them. It's just cowardice that allows the people who currently have the advantage to continue to have the advantage in all cases.
Yep.
Wonderful point. That's
Absolutely
exactly
correct.
right. Yep.
Why don't we take a break?
All right, quick break, guys, and then when we come back, I mean, this is, look, there's so many, every day there's 12 stories of the day, right? But then this next one of Trump's interaction with a Nobel Prize winner, unreal that he's the president. You'll see when we return. We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment. All right, back on the Young Turks. First of all, I want to remind you guys that we are going to Detroit and we're covering the debates at the same time, both in Los Angeles and in Detroit. So check it out on Roku, Zumo, Pluto, YouTube TV. We will be live, okay? So in studio will be Anna Kasparian, Ben Mankiewicz, and Ida Rodriguez. That's a fantastic team. And a much weaker team in Detroit, me and John.
For what it's worth.
But all 5 of us will be on air that night from 2 different locations. Definitely check that out. And also join our rally there. If you're anywhere near Detroit, tyt.com/rally. John and I will be there, and we will have other speakers as well as usual. We are contemplating a pizza party for the people who show up, if we can afford it, okay? I'm not saying tyt.com/yes, but we're trying to figure out if we're gonna do a watch party afterwards like we did in Miami, but they are a little expensive. So tyt.com/yes, if you wanna contribute to that, that would be amazing. But either way, please show up. We'd love to have you there, and your presence is incredibly relevant because it affects the politicians and the media that are there.
So super fast, can we bring up that first image, the one with Anna and the rest of the crew, just for 1 sec? So that face Ben is making is a face he makes when he finds out that Dan Le Batard doesn't remember working with him.
Oh, too soon.
He's probably not watching, but somebody tweet that I tagged him. Okay, with that, why don't we get back to the news?
All right, no, sorry, hold on. A couple of great comments here. Doc Martinez writes in, another late night while vacationing in Madrid, watching my favorite news media, TYT, had to tune in for the DR.
Right.
Damage report?
Or Dominican Republic, I'm not sure.
Okay, Megan says, I think when you have a president that comes at your network for being political, that means you should be more political, not less. That's a great point. Carson Rodke writes in, thank you, I'm so glad someone finally said the words, there are things bigger than sports. Tommy Too Strong writes in, it's important, let's keep it real. Americans pay attention to sports much more than politics. Athletes like Kaepernick, Tommy Smith, Muhammad Ali, and Rapinoe had huge impacts because of their place in sports.
Yeah.
So that's a great point. There's another some person on Twitter who talked about how it's the Coliseum. It often is used to distract, and that's why we shouldn't allow that to happen. But I'm gonna end on 2 fun ones about me. Styo fan on Twitter says, Cenk, dude, you have the best picnic shirt of all time. Hashtag left is best. Okay, by the way, every guy has a shirt.
Yes, he does.
Every single guy on the planet.
That's a starter kit.
Yeah,
They just give it to you. They're like, here.
Yeah.
Yes, here are your khaki pants, navy blazer, picnic shirt.
Yeah. I go to like different events and I see guys in this. By the way, both the guys attending the events and the waiters have this. Okay.
Oh, there's an Instagram account. It's I think it's that J Crew shirt, and it's just photos of guys in DC wearing. I think it's that shirt.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and last one, Kira Jade says, I don't know how anyone could not recognize Cenk. He's unforgettable. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or they could be like, I don't know, you're that guy in the picnic shirt, right?
It's on Instagram.
Yeah. All right, what's next?
Okay, let's turn back to politics. Representative Ilhan Omar has certainly had a week being attacked by Donald Trump and virtually every member of right-wing media and his supporters and all of that. But she has not been cowed by that, and she returned home to her district to be greeted by this.
Welcome home, Ilhan. Welcome home, Ilhan.
And it's good to see chanting being used for good instead of evil.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually one of the most heartwarming things I've seen in a long time, man. That crowd was diverse, but mainly white. And of course, that makes sense. Minnesota's mainly white. And they're like, no, we're here for you. And we're proud that you're our Congresswoman. And we do want you to go back home, which is right here.
Yeah.
And so that's the America I know and love.
Yeah, no, that's really great in terms of supporting her and letting her know that she's not alone. And something to bear in mind also is that it's my understanding that these members of Congress, that they don't necessarily have a security detail when they're away from the Capitol building. And thus they have to provide their own security, or sometimes they get offered private security by way of the Secret Service to be able to follow them, but otherwise they are accessible, and that becomes problematic. And so for people, I say, who don't even care about her life and don't have that inkling and that little bit of humanity, at least remember that there are people around her that may be protecting her, and also you're threatening their lives.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, there's so much more and it's so much bigger, and what she's doing is right.
I think in the last day, there was one representative, it might have been Al Green, I'm not sure, who was requesting extra security for members of the House of Representatives because of the actions and statements of the president. Isn't that amazing? And so understandable. I try not to focus on it too much, but I'm just so worried for that entire group.
Yeah. That
they are continually demonized. I mean, we saw what happened to Maxine Waters last year. He picks his target and he sends them there, and hopefully this time no Cesar Seax. Hopefully there's just people chanting and not people who start sending pipe bombs to the list of targets that Trump has given them.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I want to say one more thing about America, and I know that some on the left sometimes understandably get down on the country when it's the year 2019 and we still haven't gotten rid of racism, and we still see it every day in the videotapes, whether it's cops or it's Trump or whoever it might be, right? Let alone all the other things that are wrong with this country. But this is a statement to the left and to the right wing. Remember though, for the left wing, America as an idea is wonderful. It's about equality and justice for all. So let's keep the idea and let's keep the flag as we do, and actually try to get us to live up to that idea. And I know that the overwhelming majority of the left wing believes that. Some are obsessed with fighting the right wing and go, but did you know this and this and this and all the things that are problems with America? I know, yeah, of course we know, and I know that they don't know. So I appreciate that you're on the path of trying to fix those things, but don't let that cloud your view of what America can be, is supposed to be, so that we actually work towards those ideas and those goals. And for the right wing, you just don't understand the country. The whole point is we're supposed to make it better and better and better. That's why it says in the First Amendment that not only can you speak out against the government, and not only are you supposed to have press that's holding the government accountable, but you're supposed to have a redress of grievances. It's in the First Amendment. So if you don't understand that and you think you're just supposed to shut your mouth and never criticize the country because you love it, no, it's the exact opposite. You're supposed to criticize it because you love it so that it can get better. That's what the founding fathers wanted. That's what's dictated in the Constitution. So it would be deeply ironic if you said, in order to love America, you shouldn't criticize it, because that would miss the whole point of the country.
Yeah, imagine if modern day conservatives were around when the Constitution was being considered and there's a provision to amend it. They'd lose their mind. Amend it, it's perfect.
Remember, of course, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment are in the Bill of Rights and amendments to the original Constitution. And finally, none of you right-wingers mean it anyway. I remember when Obama was president and Clinton was president, I was pretty sure you were criticizing the government.
There was a little bit of that. So let's briefly go to Representative Omar addressing the crowd that you saw.
You're back!
We are going to continue to be a nightmare to this president. Because his policies are a nightmare to us. And we are not deterred. We are not frightened. We are ready.
I love that.
Yeah,
me too.
I love that she didn't go with the standard Democratic thing of like, well, he attacked me viciously, so I will give a very mild-mannered response, right?
Yeah.
No, she's like, no, we're going to kick his ass.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
hell yeah, right? But she does it in a political way as opposed to oh, maybe he's a threat to the country and somebody should do something about it, right?
Now, if we know anything about Trump though, it's that if a person of color criticizes him, or if a woman criticizes him, or God help us, if a woman of color criticizes him, he loses his mind. And indeed, it did not take long with him tweeting, "It is amazing how the fake news media became crazed over the chant, 'Send her back' by a packed arena, a record crowd in the great state of North Carolina."
He's unbelievable.
It's totally calm and accepting of the most vile, like more and more lies, blah, blah, blah. Mainstream media, blah, blah, blah. It is a sick partnership, so pathetic to watch. They even covered a tiny staged crowd as they greeted all capitalized, foul-mouthed Omar in Minnesota. He can't take it. No. He can't take that there were people who like her and who cheered her arrival in the district.
And as we've told you and proven 1,000 times over on the show, all right-wing critiques are projections of what they actually think. So remember the first press conference Donald Trump did in announcing his presidency back in 2015? It was all staged. He paid actors to show up. That was proven unquestionably. They paid him about $50 a pop. So he has no real, at the time, he has real fans now. At the time, he had no real fans. He had to pay people, he had to beg people, pay people to come to his press conference and to try to appear popular. So he assumes whenever there's a crowd, oh, they must be scam artists like me. So I bet, oh yeah, that's a staged crowd. No, it's not, it's real constituents who actually wanted to support her because of your vicious attacks against her.
Yeah, and so I also, like with that you saw a little bit of it in the first tweet that we saw you there, but yesterday, Donald Trump distanced himself from the chant. He didn't at all. And it was so laughable that media figures are like, I guess they were so scared at the precedent that was being set about what it looked like was happening that they were just like, just reassure us that things are gonna be okay. And so he pretended to distance himself very briefly, lied about shutting down the chant, and they lapped it up, even though we know that it's not going to last, and indeed it didn't. So we're gonna show you a video. Take a look at the way he portrays the people at last night's event, and I want you to keep the very fine people line in your mind as you do that.
No, you know what I'm unhappy with? You know what I'm unhappy with? I'm unhappy with the fact that a congresswoman can hate our country. I'm unhappy with the fact that a congresswoman can say anti-Semitic things. I'm unhappy with the fact that a congresswoman, in this case, a different congresswoman, can call our country and our people garbage. That's what I'm unhappy with. Those people in North Carolina, that stadium was packed. It was a record crowd, and I could have filled it 10 times, as you know. Those are incredible people. Those are incredible patriots.
So less than 24 hours after he distanced himself, he's now moved to they're incredible people, they're incredible patriots.
Yes.
Yeah, and nobody asked about the size of your crowd. We were talking about Ilhan Omar. He's like, oh, my crowd was bigger, my button's bigger, my crowd is bigger, my hands are bigger. Dude, let it go, okay? It's super obvious you got issues somewhere.
Oh
okay?
yes, he has size issues for days.
Yeah, nonstop, he can't get it out of his head. Anyway, he's like, can you imagine criticizing the government? Dude, we have 1,000 of your tweets when you, that was an interesting Freudian slip. 1,000 of your tweets while Obama was president. All you did was sit there and criticize the government. Oh, I can't believe it, I hate this, right? And your slogan is make America great again, which implies that America was not great. Oh, I can't believe you called the country garbage, that it wasn't great, I can't believe it. God, they have no sense of hypocrisy. And of course, their followers are low IQ. So they're like, oh yeah, that's right. That's right. And we gotta make America great again. It sucked before. America sucked. I can't believe she said something bad about America.
There's one other thing that does worry me though. And I understand that to some extent with the video that we just played for you, I just did the thing that I'm about to criticize. But so he attacks the squad and the squad responds and people defend them. Yes. But in continually having headlines about this that continue to develop and continuing to show Donald Trump talking about it, I'm worried that certain things will get sort of baked into people's consciousness that are just not true. So I don't want it to be a thing where he says they hate America, they say terrible things, he gives a list of made up things that they've supposedly said, and then we say, no, they love America anyway. Those things are lies. She has not said anti-Semitic things. AOC did not say that the people are garbage. Those are simply lies. They're verifiable lies. And the problem is that we showed it to you. you know that he's a big liar, but you're still hearing it. And when people read the quotes in the New York Times and they see it played over and over on MSNBC, and they will over and over because this feud is not gonna go away tomorrow, many of them will start to accept on some level, perhaps not even consciously, that okay, I guess they have their rights, they have their free speech, but they are saying a lot of really mean things about America when they're not. They're simply not.
Yep, no, you're absolutely right, because you kind of create the situation where mainstream media is almost reinforcing the things that he says, and it is kind of getting stuck in our heads for this thought of, oh, well, maybe they did say something like that. And that becomes problematic because it creates a narrative that we attribute to these individuals that is completely and totally inaccurate.
Yeah.
So I think we have to do a better job of not only deciphering what's true and what's false, but also put it on the mainstream media to go ahead and stop giving this man a platform.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do the next story.
Okay, we're gonna move directly, okay. Donald Trump just had a meeting with a group of some truly incredible people who have dealt with some horrific situations in a number of different parts of the world, and his interactions with them are a disgrace to him as an individual, to the office of the presidency, to all of us because he represents us. He was meeting with nearly 24 foreigners, like Nadia Murad, who's an Iraqi who was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize for speaking out against her torture and rape while in ISIS captivity. They had suffered religious persecution in their home countries from a variety of different places across the world. Now, he's gonna talk with Murad and listen to what he says. Also, look at his face as she is describing unimaginable suffering that she has experienced.
When ISIS attacked us, no one protected us. After 2003, we started to disappear from our area, from our homeland. When ISIS attacked us in 2014, they killed 6 of my brother. They killed my mom. They took me to captivity with my 11 sister-in-law, with all my sister and my nieces. Our home is destroyed. We come to here, we go to Europe, we go to Arab country that ISIS did this. Everyone saw that. If we cannot protect our dignity, our family, all this happened to me. They killed my mom, my 6 brother. They left behind them.
Where are they now?
They killed them.
Unbelievable. Okay, so let's start with the most obvious. She said twice about her whole family was killed. The mom was killed, 6 brothers were killed. And he's like, where are they now? They're dead. And she had to then explain that they're in a mass grave in Sinjar. So she's like, I don't know how more specific you want me to be. I just told you 3 times they're dead, right? I mean, you could tell with his body language, but you didn't need the body language because he just flat out told you he wasn't paying attention. But when she won a Nobel Peace Prize, and all these people, you got a Holocaust survivor, you got someone who survived the massacres of the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, etc. Turn around and face them. Like, don't dismissively like turn your head a little bit and obviously not pay attention. I watched the whole interaction. It's just stunning how it was so obvious how little he cared. He's like,
yeah.
He's like, when is this gonna be over? This isn't about me at all. And so what happened to that? Okay, and he's not done. He said other asinine things.
It's about the whole community.
We're going to look into it very
Thank
strongly.
you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
And you had the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But
They gave it to you for what reason? Maybe you can explain.
for what reason? For that after all this happened to me, I didn't give up.
Oh, really? Is that right?
It's
That's the first time.
and it's.
So you escaped?
I escaped, but I don't have my freedom yet.
Yeah, she escaped. She's in the Oval Office.
She's standing right there. Not a hologram, guys, not a hologram.
Okay, Sam Brownback, who unfortunately is the ambassador, had to remind Trump twice that she won the Nobel Prize. Nonetheless, at the end, he's like, oh, you won the Nobel Prize. Yeah. What did you think the whole thing was about, right? He's like, what'd you win it for? The thing she was explaining to you for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay,
and you could see in her face, we mentioned during the video, she'd just gotten done describing a situation, the worst thing that's happened to her, worse than I can imagine happening to anyone. And she doesn't care about the Nobel Prize. Like, that's the only thing he takes away from it. And he said, oh, but you won the Nobel Prize. She's like, I don't, what are you doing right now? And she describes all this and he says, we'll look into it very strongly.
Yeah, like
how insulting, how incredibly deeply insulting.
That's exactly what he was. He came off as a petulant child. He's not paying attention to you. He's showing you with his body language. He's showing you with his word usage and the fact that he can't even ask substantive questions. And it just really reinforces this is who this person is, especially the Nobel Prize comment, as if getting a prize is any way gonna offset the loss of your family members.
But really fast, I wanna try to reach out to any right wingers that might be watching this because they're gonna knee-jerk defend him and say, it was fine, why are you being so critical? But really, look at that body language. Like if you're telling me about how your family was slaughtered and I say over and over, okay, now imagine if you were to be sitting and trying to talk to me and you were describing the worst thing that had ever happened to you. I don't know, you dialed up a number and they asked if you wanted to speak English or Spanish and you lost your mind. Imagine if you're describing that situation to me and I turned away from you. Can you imagine how insulted, how offended you would be? And this is slightly worse than that.
No, but you don't have to worry about the body language. The body language is so obvious, but you don't have to worry about it because he told you he's not paying attention. Like if you opened up your heart for the first time ever, you told someone that a terrible sexual assault had happened to you and that your mom was killed and all of your brothers were killed and they're like, so where are they? You'd be like, oh my God, this is the most heinous person I've ever met in my life. Yeah. I mean, it's just, all right. And then finally he said, the only positive things he said was, I know the area very well you're talking about. It's tough.
No, he doesn't.
Okay, first of all, you don't know the area at all because earlier when she was talking about it, she said, well, before we were being attacked by ISIS, but now there's a battle between the Kurds and the Iraqis. And so now if I remember watching the clip for the first time going, oh, that's super interesting. I'd wanna know, hey, which side is attacking you? Are both sides attacking you? What can we do to help? This went through my head as I'm watching because she talked for a little while. And he comes back and goes, so ISIS is gone? And she's like, yeah, but now the other guys are attacking. She's like, and he's like, the Kurds and the Iraqis. Like not paying attention.
The Kurds and the Venezuelans.
Yeah.
That's who.
And not only that, I know the area very well. You don't even know it's Iraq. You don't even know it's Iraq. I know and I can describe it to you. It's tough. That's the standard definition for anything where a country's going, something's going wrong. It's tough. And finally, we're gonna look into it very strongly. Well, I guess it's covered then.
She said one thing that if he were listening, it would be a learning moment. He wasn't listening, but imagine if he had listened and taken in what she's saying in this section. If I cannot go to my home and live in a safe place and get my dignity back, this is not about ISIS. It's about I'm in danger. My people cannot go back. So there are not always with ISIS, but other situations, there are people that can't go back to where they come from because they would be killed there or sexually assaulted or God knows what. They're stuck and they need help. He wasn't paying attention, he didn't learn that lesson. He can't look into the eyes of a person who's experienced something that I personally can't imagine going through and learn through that experience. But God, it would be great if we had a president who did.
You know what, and the right wingers, I'm pretty confident they're gonna say, he was struggling understanding a woman with an accent. And I would like to think, based on his marital record, that's not the case. He could understand this woman, he just chose not to listen to her.
Yeah. That's a great point. And guys, last thing, look, even if you're MAGA, have you ever seen anyone who's more unprepared for any job ever? You know, I mean, if your dentist came in, it's like one of those ads, right? Like your dentist comes in and is like, teeth. No, I only look at ears, but all right, I'll give it a shot, right? And this guy's like, where's Iraq again? Right, I know it's tough. I'm gonna look into it very strongly. He doesn't know anything, he doesn't know anything. He doesn't even know, like, let alone geography, let alone policy, which you need to know as president. He doesn't even, he doesn't even know how to do fake empathy. Like politicians, you could get annoyed at them because you say, hey, you know, I'm not sure they really care that much. Maybe they're faking it a little. This animal doesn't even know to fake it. He's like, oh yeah, your mom was killed. You were raped. I got it. I'll look into it very strongly. Okay, hey, you won the Nobel? Hey, how'd you do that? Man, I'd like to do that. How'd you do that? I just told you. Okay.
Cenk, really fast. Do you remember when he had to make phone calls to the spouses of people who died abroad? And worst case scenario, one would imagine, is you don't come off as genuine. He ended up feuding with one of the spouses because the call went so bad. It was like something out of The Office. It was just such a bungled job. All you have to do is call, deliver horrible information, and listen to what they have to say, show a little bit of compassion. And he could not do it. Wasn't up to the task. He's not up to the task of being president. He's not up to the task of being human.
Yeah, look, if you're proud of that buffoon, deeply, deeply embarrassed for you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, we got to take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got more stories, including the Just Democrats have been attacked by a Democrat. Oh, who would have guessed? We will counterattack.
The people who give out a thing called the Nobel Prize.